Up next, we have Alexandra Grebe from Bayer talking about a use case, a specific example of what they did to build the real world data store, RWD. It's a human and machine friendly self-service data product. It accelerates real world evidence generation across the lifelong patient pathway from pre-diagnosis to treatment. The company achieved this by embracing data mesh and the data product approach, shifting that mindset internally, like we've been talking about throughout this event, from application-centric thinking to data-centric thinking, and the data being exposed to many users and many domains. So let's welcome on Alexandra.
So I'm Alexandra. I'm working as Head of Data Design and Architecture in the Medical Affairs Pharmacovigilance, IT and Digital team at Bayer. And I'm going to present today on the Real World Data Store, a data product that accelerates evidence generation. And yeah, I'm always impressed by the scale of data mesh at Roche. So here today with my talk, you will see more bottom-up approach from a bunch of data mesh enthusiasts. And just disclaimer, the opinions expressed are my own and not necessarily those of Bayer. And yeah, I want to show you a bit, I want to go into this use case around real world data, so you understand also why we need the real world data as a data product, and then explain a bit what is the real world data store, and then how we build the products that customers love, and also connect it a bit to the data mesh principles, and also share some learnings we have. So real world evidence is basically all kind of health data that we collect or that is available around patients outside of the typical clinical trials that pharma companies are doing. So these can be electronic health records in hospitals. This can be insurance claims. This can also be mobile or wearable data. Can also be social media data. And this information is very interesting for us in the pharma industry, because we can use this kind of data for the complete pharma value chain. So in the very early part of drug discovery, we understand the burden of disease for our patients. We can learn on disease mechanisms, incidence and prevalence of certain diseases. And in the clinical development, we can augment our clinical trials with real-world data to speed up the clinical trials, and to make them also more real-world-like, so not too artificial here. And also post-marketing phase 4 studies, when the drug is then on the market. Of course, we want to observe how it is doing in a much broader patient population. Maybe you remember with the COVID vaccines, for example, some rare side effects you only find once the vaccination is used by many million people. And so we also want to understand better the benefit risk pattern of profile of our drugs, and also, of course, compare it with our competitors. The real world data store purpose was, so you can see that many different groups, many different functions use real world data, but usually these are the data is rather scattered. So you have different project teams that collect this kind of data or buy this kind of data, and they use it within their programs. But normally there's not so much of an incentive to share them with a broader colleagues from other functions. And we wanted to create this central place, bringing together information around real world data, make them also easier accessible for many more colleagues at Bayer, and also to link more information to the real world data sources, so that also our real world data community at Bayer can share learnings and experiences and knowledge around them. And we think this real-world data could perfectly be offered as a data product. So I hope I have convinced you about the value we can have out of real-world data, and also from a technology business perspective, does it make sense to create a product? So I strongly recommend to start building a product only if you have a good use case, and also if you know what kind of data is available and if it's really feasible to make it available as a product. Then, as we have learned, data products serve normally the secondary use of data. So real-world data is a typical example. So in hospitals, you collect this data to monitor the treatment of your patients. But here at pharma company, we use these data for other use cases, as I have explained earlier. So a secondary use of the data. And here also this idea from application-centric to data-centric. With real-world data, we usually buy this data from data providers, so they are naturally taken out of their original place of where they are created. So, for example, hospital systems, and they are offered usually as structured or semi-structured data to us. So we can build this data-centric product around this. And then that has been mentioned before, of course, this idea of data as a product to create user delight, offering them the data for different kinds of users, making them easily discoverable, understandable, for the user community. And what does the real-world data store look like? So we started with rather simple dashboard by bringing together what kind of data sources we have at all at Bayer. So we didn't have an overview, and we registered data in a data catalog with some meta information to make them easily findable, comparable. And so that's also part of our fair data principles that have been mentioned before, giving them also a unique identifier. And then the second product we have is a bit more detailed. Medical definition library is a place to describe patient cohorts, because we also made a lot of user research, what people want to do with real-world data, where are the hurdles. And here it's also quite time consuming to build these patient population definitions, and so providing context around the real-world data. And there we also created this library where people can share their definitions with others. And that's also a part of the interoperability aspect of the FAIR principles, to link the data and create some context around the data. And then the most important product of the real-world data store, of course, are the real-world data assets, to make them accessible and usable for our data science colleagues in a cloud environment with high performance. And also here we think of this platform idea to create these reusable data services, so that in future maybe we can also provide these services not only to real-world data, but maybe also different data types. And the store, I mean, of course, the numbers of Roche are much more impressive. Maybe we can only compete with the terabytes of data that we have. But thinking that we also started 2 years ago and started with one real-world data source, and now we have grown to 20 data sources. We could also by replacing outdated technology and bringing together the scattered solutions into this one data product, save a lot of run cost also by optimizing our cloud infrastructure. And we have one dedicated DevOps team that is managing the whole data product. So you see, it's really only a handful of people driving this. end-to-end processes, and we also onboarded cross-functional users. So it's really the data products are, so on the one hand, data are provided by different functions, and they are also used across functions. And that is also, quite new, I would say. And also, by the way we have set it up, we can easily exchange data, for example, with our commercial colleagues, because we are using the same Snowflake platform. And then we also connect the data sources to different analysis environments. So also here, looking at the user needs, some prefer to work with SAS as an analytics environment, others prefer R and Python, and others use the OMOP data with Atlas, and we can connect it to all these different environments. And we have originally set our product up in the US domain, and now we are also setting this up in the Asian region and in Europe, because these are also restrictions that come with the data sometimes. Coming a bit to data mesh principles, as was already mentioned by Omar in the first talk, you touch upon all the principles if you implement a data product. So here, connecting to domain-oriented ownership, so the real-world data stewards. I don't like to call them data owners, because in the end, the data is owned by the company, and we have more like custodians of the data, and they translate the license agreements into data usage rules. So to drive our access management here. Then, of course, data as a product. We have a product team that offers these different real-world data services around this. And now we also have a downstream product team that uses our real-world data store for, as in their product to provide more visualization of our real-world data and patient populations. And then looking at computational governance. So here we have, as I said, register all real-world data sources in our data catalog, and also ask for a minimum of metadata that helps us in connecting the different data sources, making them comparable, and providing this context around the data sources. And then the self-serve data platform. So we have set up this cloud infrastructure, reusable data services, doing a lot of automation of the data ingestion pipeline, and also using an authorization service that can then also be easily used for other data domains. And here we are also a bit in a conflict. So are we now more a data product team for real-world data, or maybe also transforming more into a platform team, offering these services to a broader, other types of data, other data product teams in the future? Looking a bit into how we build this. So it was also mentioned before, a key part of a product is to be very user-centric. So we also love the design thinking approach, looking really into the user problem first, and then come up with a solution. And of course, the fair data principles that allow us to really reuse and connect the data. I think that's really the mesh or enabling the mesh in this data mesh approach. And then also having user-centric measures of success here. And so to really look, how is the data product adopted? How many active users do you have? How frequently is the product used? And also important, in a big company, you cannot underestimate the importance of communication. So really communicate broadly that this data product is available or that a certain data service is available. You have to really communicate in many different channels to make people aware of your solutions. Yeah, and then just some challenges and learnings. Very important, I think, is to have the first follower, to start with a movement and find these early adopters that believe in you, because otherwise people will question, will you be able to scale up? Will you bring the performance? And once you start and have a showcase, it's much easier to convince the others to follow you. So it's important to have a good sponsor. Takes some time to gain the trust of the users. And we have learned that we can gain the trust by really being very responsive and fast. So maybe you have seen we can provide a new data source now within a couple of days. And in the past, that was more a question of several weeks to make this possible. And the challenge I see with a broader or scalable approach is really the mesh idea. So I think we have a lot of different data domains and different products, but yet they are more living in silos, and we have to come up with this mesh connecting these data products together, also finding these overarching governance rules, overarching services that can be reused. So this is still something we have to work on. And what's also a challenge, if you create these products to be used cross-functionally, sometimes there's the challenge who is then paying for these products, right? So if you have many customers, that's also a challenge in big company. I also want to thank my team that has made it all possible, and hand back to Melissa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I was curious. I had a couple of questions for you. We've talked about getting buy-in, incentivizing people to kind of start this process. And you mentioned that you found these early adopters. How did you do that at Bayer? What was motivating to these early adopters to want to be part of this process?
It's really to serve first their needs, right? So they want to have easy access to the data, and we provide it with the condition that they also make it then available to other users, right? And we help them to set this up, for example, describing the rules of access. That's mainly what they have to do. And then also being prepared to answer questions of more users coming and being interested in the data. But I think what really then encourages people is if they see they also get access to other data sources that they haven't had before. And then maybe you're also willing to, pay a little bit more into it. So it's like a give and take. And now users see they really have much more possibilities here. And I think that's also it's not really an incentive for them, but at least the motivation maybe to participate.
Sounds like it was similar to what we heard. I think Omar say too, start small and grow a little bit. So you started with one, and then now people are seeing the value, and that's motivating for them to want to participate. What has been the most challenging part of this process for you as you've gone through it? And how did you all overcome that?
I think it's still the trust. So I think with real world data and the kind of work we are doing is, of course, in the end, there are patient lives behind that, right? So you have to make sure that really experts work with the data, and that the analysis that are done then also, have a high quality. And that's a bit where people I think especially in pharma are reluctant to go into this sharing of data, right? So it's more, usually people are more protective and rather want to control data access. So I think here we still have to work on that. So at least for broader community of experts, the data is available. There's still reluctancy to make the data more explorable in, for example, dashboards for users that maybe are not these kind of very these experts of the data. But here we are also trying to come up with little use cases and show the value and maybe build on the common easy questions that come with data that maybe could be really answered with these dashboards without having this danger of misinterpreting results that come up.
Do you think that something like the federated governance is going to continue to help with that as you go, or are there other types of solutions that you think will help with that process? Or is it just time? I mean, trust always takes time and making sure that you do it right and you see the kind of proof points. But I'm curious, what are you seeing?
We hope also to get more into this computational governance aspect. So right now we don't have too much computation behind it, but the idea is, for example, to work with this kind of data, you need certain trainings. And we could in the future maybe then, if a person applies for the data, get the training records right out of the system. So we don't have to ask them anymore, did you do the training? So simple things like that. And we could think in the future, maybe if we have all these rules around a data source explained, described in an also computational manner, maybe then we don't even have to go through these access processes anymore. So colleagues would naturally have access to the data according to which kind of group they are working in, which kind of expertise they have. And I think that could also maybe remove even this way of federated governance, or at least involving the data stewards in giving access to each and every colleague in the future.
And so what's next for you in your data mesh journey? Where are you looking to go in the next 6-12 months at Bayer?
So we are on the one hand working on these reusable data services. So we really want to set them up in a way that other product teams can use them for data ingestion and the data provisioning in these analysis environments. And then thinking it should not only be real world data, right? It can be any kind of other semi-structured data. That's one idea. And also we want to expand the real world data sources that we have currently. So we are mainly ingesting electronic health records and claims, and we also want to go into wearable medical device data and then look what kind of services we could build around these data sets.
That was interesting. You talked about how many sources of data you have, and not all of them the original source and that type of stuff. So but it's interesting if you can get more types of data to be able to bring that in and just know that there's high data quality. The amount of information you can derive from that is limitless, it seems like. If you think of questions after the fact, please let us know. We're happy to get those answered for you. But thank you so much, Alexandra, for your talk today. Very, very great information.